Back in the lab on night 2 of the NFL draft. We're recapping all the Vikings action up on the Locked On Sports Minnesota Network and breaking down their newest cornerback, Mekhi Blackman from USC. Go get your guys is the tagline. I got my guys with me. Luke Braun, host of Locked On Vikings on Twitter, at Luke Braun NFL. Sam Ekstrom, co-host of the Ron Johnson Show on Twitter, at Sam Ekstrom. Quick reminder before we jump into it. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook partner of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. All right, fellas, let's jump into it. It was a long wait for the Vikings until Kwesi was finally back on the clock, all the way at pick 87. We thought they might move up, especially when you started the day with Will Levis still sitting on the board. And then later, as the night went on, we all watched Hendon Hooker slide pick after pick until he finally gets sniped by who else? The Detroit Lions. Rest assured, we'll have to touch on that pick a little bit later on. But guys, they finally get on the clock. Kwesi, he summons the ghost of Rick Spielman at TCO. He moves back with the Niners, grabs an extra 5th, grabs an extra 7th. I think a move, correct me if I'm wrong here in a second, Luke, on the trade chart, at least most trade charts, seemed about even value, and Kwesi gets a total of 7 picks as of now. But, Luke, Vikings finally get on the clock. They select Mekhi Blackmon, cornerback USC. I guess your just quick thoughts, instant reaction of the Vikings going with Blackmon and some much-needed cornerback help with their second pick.
Yeah, Kwesi said on the podium after the pick that, they were going to pick Blackman at 87, which you kind of always say when you trade down, but I will say no corners went off the board between 87 and 102, so it's easy to believe him, I guess. I don't have a great sense for him at this immediate juncture. I'm going to watch some tape and get back to you. Listen to Locked On Vikings. But my understanding is he's physical, feisty press man corner, and it's very Brian Flores, guy that's useful in the run game, can get off a block. That matters to Flores. That might explain why you take him over a guy like Clark Phillips, but hopefully he's somebody, inside, outside that you can, if you have a matchup that you really like him, if you're going up against a receiver that you think is soft, that you think you can beat up, just go put him on that guy all day and say, yeah, that guy's going to be in a dogfight all day. If you have someone you think can't handle that on the other side, that seems like the idea here. Of course, pick 102, you're not getting probably expecting to get somebody that, starts day one all the way. He'll probably have to compete with Evans and Booth, and you're probably going to see some level of all of those guys on the field, health notwithstanding. So yeah, that's where I'm at on it so far. Seems like a scheme fit, and it's very Brian Flores. This is the kind of guy that he's going to want.
Perfectly said, I think, just in a nutshell. Again, forget about the consensus board. At least that's what the Vikes did. Seemed to fit the Viking-specific scheme and probably only another, handful or two of teams in the NFL with the defenses they run. Sam, it was tough to watch so many big names fly off the board with so many pressing needs for the Vikes, especially after going wide out in round 1. You're sitting there waking up today going, man, we got a lot of needs to fill here, not a lot of picks. Your thoughts on the pick itself? And I guess when you look back, right, can you help fans justify the original move that cost them that second-round pick when they traded for T.J. Hawkinson? Because I think that's what fans need to remember today, right? Like, I know tonight was tough, but you still got a top 3, top 5, 10 in the league with that 55th overall pick.
Yeah, definitely. The Hawkinson move was brilliant, and it looks like it's going to work out awesome for Kwesi and the Vikings. Now, you can't do that all the time because – when you trade for established players late in their rookie deal, you do have to end up paying them, right? So that is an expensive proposition to always do that and not add younger players with full rookie deals. But I think that last year, the way the season was going, you added a piece that could have gotten you over the hump last year, and he did help tremendously on offense and will help this year and probably for years to come. That's a great trade. Kwesi comes out looking great. The pick today, first of all, the trade down, you get a 5th and a 7th, which amounts to maybe a 4th total in overall value. I think it's a fine trade. It's just coincidental that it ended up being the last pick of the 3rd round, kind of like how last year he went to the last pick of the 1st round all the way back, making the beat writers sit there all night. But Mekhi,
that's why y'all don't like it. You want to go home.
Yeah, I'm not going to bring any bias into this. Mekhi Blackman is not a cornerback that we spent a lot of time talking about on our shows. We talked about a lot of cornerbacks, guys, Mekhi Blackmon was not necessarily one of them. And that's probably because he wasn't really projected to go day 2 by a lot of prognosticators. The Arif Hassan consensus board had 13 cornerbacks above Blackman that were not selected. He was CB 10 in this draft, and Arif Hassan's consensus board had him at 23. So obviously a lot of corners went before him, but you look at what are the red flags, like what caused him to not be projected as highly. He's older. He's 24 years old. He did have some kind of lean years at Colorado where not only the team wasn't very good, I thought he was decent, but not unbelievable. And he is a little undersized. So he's not like the prototypical cornerback prospect, like Keely Ringo, for instance, balled out for a couple of years, 20 years old. I mean, that's kind of the raw talent, young guy that you're looking for. And this guy was a little more of a one-hit wonder at USC, but he has a lot of snaps under his belt, and he seems to fill a very specific need in this Brian Flores defense, which is good in man-to-man, good on the boundary, plays, according to a lot of evaluators, a little bigger than his 5'11", 180 frame. So I guess you trust Flores on this, and you do come away from day 2 with a cornerback, which I think most people would have circled and said, this is our priority.
Yeah, well said. Not going to lie, had a lot of names written down, done a lot of homework on this cornerback class specifically. Loaded class again, just like last year. Darius Rush from South Carolina, Keely Ringo from Georgia. Also didn't love to see, by the way, Blackman, the 25th ranked corner on Dane Brugler's board from The Athletic. But like you both said, I mean, that doesn't mean there's not a lot to like about this kid, because the way he fits with the Vikings and Flores' scheme specifically. This was USC's #1 cover man. And I just read before we jumped on, there was a quote from a coach. They said every week going into every game, we would feel confident putting him on opposing team's #1 wideout all game long. 15 PBUs, 3 interceptions last year alone. 33 pass breakups throughout his career, spends the first 4 years at Colorado, transfers to USC, and at his best season at USC. So you got to like how he finished on a high note, I guess, too. And again, he just finds his way to the ball. He gets his hands on the ball. And that's something I remember about Mike Zimmer always bringing up, is the guys that can rack up these deflections, because it's not always going to be interceptions, right? But the guys who can get their hands on the ball more times than not really translate well to the next level. This is a very instinctive player. He's got a great feel for the position and just does a really good job, I think, disrupting passes at the catch point. And like Luke said, plays with the swag, man. You love to see that at the position. You need confidence at that position. He's a pit bull too, only 178. He thinks he's 200 pounds when he suits up and gets on the field. And again, probably most importantly, like you guys mentioned, pure man cover corner, lines up on the boundary almost every single snap at USC. This just feels like a guy that was targeted. They handpicked this guy and said, I don't care about the rankings. Throw your mock drafts in the garbage. You get into those third downs. You got Byron Murphy sliding on the inside of the nickel. Now we got some backup. We got some depth with a guy waiting in the wings as, again, some outside boundary help. He's got to work on the penalties. 5 penalties last year, kind of a lot like Andrew Booth. Struggles getting a little too grabby at times. I worry about that. But he just needs more refinement and some more coaching at the end of the day. I like it. I don't love it. I do like it, though, and I think he's got a good chance to step in, be a big-time contributor in a Brian Flores secondary specifically. And he just fits the needs and fills the traits they clearly were lacking and just looking for at the cornerback position. I want to talk about the Vikings game plan moving forward, maybe some of the best players still on the board, as well as the rest of the NFC North and what they've been doing. But first, Sam, get a little hungry again. A little word from our sponsor.
It's almost midnight here in the Central Time Zone. Thanks to all watching this live stream. If you're looking for a delicious snack, go load up on some Built Bars. You can do it right now at Built.com. You can go to one of those 24-hour Walmarts, go to the pharmacy section, get the 4-bar box, get the 13-bar box. Why are they the best protein bar in the world? Because they are low in sugar, low in calories, high in protein, 17 grams of protein, and yet covered in 100% real chocolate, amazing flavors, peanut butter brownie, cookies and cream, brownie batter puffs. I love the puffs. Go get some Built Bars today, Built.com, Walmart, or Sam's Club.
All right, before we get into the Vikings game plan moving forward, the best players available, we got to talk about this NFC North, what they're doing right now, just real quick. Because last night we came on here, we sat right here, we said, hey, the Vikings may have just had the best first round of the entire division, especially watching the Lions take a running back and a linebacker as early as they did. But there's this analogy that I love. Round one is the outside of your car. You can hit on that first pick, and the outside of the car looks great. It looks fast. It looks new. It looks clean. It looks in shape. But rounds 2, 3, 4, 5, I mean, that's what a lot of times November and December football comes down to. So what's it look like when you pop the hood here, guys? Is the engine strong? What's the interior look like? Are the bones good? Or does it just look good from the outside with that flashy, nice first round pick? Because the Detroit Lions now, whether you liked Hendon Hooker or not, by the way, just added a lot of good football players. And they all of a sudden not only have the nice looking exterior, they got all the leather interior going on too. They got the big V8 engine. They got that, what's that, NOS turbo button from all those Fast and Furious movies? They got everything, guys. So, Luke, let me start with you. Lions were already favored to win the NFC North before the weekend. How worried should fans be about the future of the NFC North now after watching Brad Holmes and the Lions kind of work some magic again tonight?
I'm not sure what everything they did this weekend has a lot to do with their division odds this year, especially somebody like Hendon Hooker not going to play. He's
that's
like
the
a
retro
succession
vehicle.
plan, possibly.
He's the retro outfitted car.
He's the Caravan Kirk Cousins drives.
Yeah.
Yeah. Here's what I think about the Lions taking Hendon Hooker. If it precludes them from taking a quarterback in 2024, which I think so. I mean, if you listen to Matt Derry on Locked On Lions, they've been into Goff forever. I think Goff can take them to the promised land. They'll never take a quarterback in that 2024 class. They were never taking a quarterback this year. That's excellent. That's great. Back this roster. Dan Campbell is building Dan Campbell's team. And it's very funny to watch a lot of the analytics people that were like really darlings on the Lions were the analytics darling have to like take them out back like it's old Yeller, tears in their eyes, and put them down for taking a running back. It's so funny. And, now they take I guess he was consensus fifth quarter. He was my QB 7. Hendon Hooker was. Look, if Hendon Hooker turns out to be the great.
Sam, you'll get your turn. Sam, hold on. You'll get your turn. Hold on.
Had a 4th round grade on him. So I love seeing that go to the Lions, which I've been sitting here nervous about the Lions getting a serious quarterback. And now I feel like, great, they're never getting a serious quarterback. We can be okay with that. I like the Brian Branch pick for them. I like that move in the secondary. They needed help in that secondary. I think they needed a guy. I think that like Jack Campbell is such a great Dan Campbell pick. It's just a physical, get the running game the way that they wanted to. I think they're building the team Dan Campbell wants. How successful that will be is one thing, but they're sticking to their identity, damn it. And that is admirable. I can jive with that, but I am happy that they're not going to have a serious quarterback. That's great.
Yeah, you got to respect at least the game plan Dan Campbell's committed to. And it's funny. Somebody said, if you just look at the picks in reverse, Lions knocked it out of the park. If you tell people, all right, they took Hendon Hooker. Does that
mean taking Hendon Hooker at 12? Because I'm going to hold your feet to the fire.
Well, when you look at the whole body and you stack it up, right? Branch in the first.
What's more controversial, Gibbs or Hooker?
In the first.
You grab Laporta, Jack Campbell.
I'd take Gibbs over Hooker every time.
Yeah, to go along with, Aiden Hutchinson, Jamison Williams last year. I know the Lions are still the Lions. I don't want to blow it out of proportion, but that is a good young core and nucleus for the next 5 years. That's what I'm saying. Sam, you and I, we got to do a quick 180 now. We got to pray Hendon Hooker is not a good quarterback in the NFL. We got to pray, maybe the knee stuff lingers. Baby. The Tennessee offense hopefully does him no favors. And the fact that maybe he's just so old, his chances at being an elite NFL quarterback take a hit. But take a moment and talk to all the fans out there that did want the Vikings to draft Hooker or quarterback for a second. What do you tell them, I guess, after knowing once it was all said and done, it wouldn't have costed more than a few late cheap draft picks to move up and take a swing on this guy. And we all could have at least gone to bed tonight, whether you like him or not, at least knowing there's a game plan at quarterback after next year. What do you tell the fans that are bumming out right now about what just transpired there?
Yeah, well, it would have been, I think, a little bit of a tough sell to fans, to ownership. that, hey, we're going to move up. We're going to, remove some of our own capital this year and have like, in the end, 3 total picks. And we're going to knock ourselves down to 4 picks next year. And then we're going to get this guy and stash him for at least 1 year. And then he's going to be 26 next year. It would have been a very polarizing move for the Vikings to go up to get him. Now, Luke, we liked him. We liked Hendon Hooker. I think we would have been okay with the Vikings taking him in the first round. Okay, he fell to the 3rd round. Now, from the Lions' perspective, they kind of did the positional value opposite bingo, like linebacker, running back, tight end, safety. It was a good pick. Safety is not the most valuable position, though. They didn't add to their defensive line,
and he can play corner too. You shouldn't call him just a safety. He's a flexible D-back.
Oh, he's a great nickel corner for sure.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I'll give them
positional value reasons.
They added a cornerback, a hybrid cornerback. Didn't add to their receiving core. They still have Jameson Williams suspended, and their quarterback is a stash for 2 years, maybe 1 or 2 years. Goff is signed through 2024. Let's move on to the Packers.
27.
The Packers take 2 tight ends. Okay, so they might have a really nice 12 personnel, but again, they don't add to their cornerback position. They don't add to their wide receiver position. Like, I still think that you're walking away as a viewer of the NFC North, looking at the big picture, and you say the Vikings added 2 players at key positional value spots who are likely going to contribute early in the season. I think that's a win for Minnesota. I don't know if it swings the odds, but it certainly doesn't propel the Packers or propel the Lions, in my eyes, that far ahead of the Vikings. In fact, if you told me that the Lions would have 5 picks in the top 70 and these are the players they would add, I think I'm breathing a big sigh of relief, honestly, if I'm a Vikings fan.
Well, let's finish that conversation you just started. Packers and Bears, just real quick, 30, 60 seconds. Collective draft grade thus far on both those teams and the pros and cons, just from the Vikings lens here. Sam, I'll let you finish that combo.
Yeah, and remind me, the Bears haven't had any more picks, so it was just Darnell Wright, or did they?
Yeah, they had a 3rd round
They took
pick,
a big nose, right?
Yeah, they picked Gervin Dexter, was it? Let's check.
Okay,
is that it?
Get a name for me.
I believe
so.
Tyreek Stevenson, the Miami corner, and then
Zach Pickens. And Zach Pickens as well.
The 3 tech from South Carolina, correct. Yep.
Okay.
So Gervin Dexter, Tyreek Stevenson, and Zach Pickens.
Yeah, I guess after seeing the dust settle in free agency, I wasn't really taking the Bears all that seriously anyway. I don't think they're ready. I think they're on the Lions trajectory, right? The Lions had a slow build, and they came around at the end of year 2. I think the Bears are going to be the same way, maybe even a little bit behind, because I don't think they have the offensive talent to do it. The Bears don't have the offensive talent that the Lions did last year. So again, the Packers are the wild card because they've got, I think, more bones in place to be a successful team. Jordan Love is the quarterback. Huge unknown. The Vikings, albeit their defense is still a gigantic question mark to me until we see what Brian Flores can unveil. But that offense can compete with anybody. So for that reason, I think the Vikings are still maybe just slight favorites in this NFC North going forward.
Luke, 30, 40 seconds. Packers, Bears, draft grades, pros and cons. What'd you think thus far?
Super interesting to me that the Packers went double tight end. That tells me that they maybe are going a similar direction to the Vikings. Vikings and Packers might be in a little bit of lockstep, trying to go to more 12 personnel. This is their version of signing Josh Oliver. But the Bears, it's hard to know what to make of the Bears because it feels like it's still just so incomplete. And talking to like Lauren Cox of Locked On Bears, they are they're not exactly selling themselves as a complete thought yet, as this is a Super Bowl team. This is still kind of we're building towards something and we're trying to take our time with it. But hey, get an interior. That's where a lot of that stuff starts. And they picked 2 big dogs on the interior line. So there's your Garrett Bradbury thing, but also they had Jalen Carter in their laps and didn't do that. So I'm like,
that's
I don't really know what to make
man.
of that.
That's my thing. And who knows, once we stack them up top to bottom, once the weekend's complete, maybe my thoughts will change, but you go all the way back to the first pick. I thought Ryan Poles missed out on arguably the best player in the draft when he traded down from 1 And then Jalen Carter falls to 9 and you still don't take him. I just thought that was a huge win for the rest of the NFC North. I get it. They needed a tackle no matter what. Darnell Wright, plug and play tackle, I think. But you also need talent on your defensive line, too. You need talent everywhere. Carter just looks like an absolute game wrecker. And, of course, you're right. Rich get richer with Philly grabbing him. Also thought the Packers passing on Jackson Smith-Njigba. Now, I'm going back to yesterday for a second. But for another defensive player, it was just kind of wild. And then to come back and go wide receiver, tight end. I still think that was more than enough to get. Yeah, exactly. No, you're totally right. A lot of gritty
Iowa guys in the division.
Classic. Yeah. Just a staple, right? But
like, I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong here, I don't think a single NFC North team has taken a player below their consensus ranking. I think every single NFC North pick has been a reach by the consensus board, but correct me if I'm wrong on that. I don't know about
Brian Branch. I think Brian Branch was
Brian Branch. You're right. Yeah.
Tyreek Stevenson at, pick 25 in round 2, maybe, but you're right, Luke. The point stands. Like, not many. For how many picks there's been in this division? 1, maybe 2. That's it. Everybody else, you're right. Probably a reach. Vikings, as of now, guys, back up to 7 total picks. Doesn't sound like a huge difference, honestly, but once I think you stack them on top of one another, is going to feel like a huge difference, at least on paper, once this weekend concludes. And again, this is the glue in between the cracks of every roster on days 2 and 3 where you find these guys. I get it. We're into tier 3 now for a lot of these positions. Who's still sitting out on the board, though, right now, just staring you in the face? If you're Kwesi, go get your guys. Who's one of your guys you'd love to see the Vikings take a swing on tomorrow? Luke, maybe just a 3, 4, 5 handful of names fans can just jot down to target for tomorrow.
So the guy I'm pounding the table for right now is probably Jaren Hall, quarterback out of BYU. Ran a very difficult McVay scheme. Everything was really, really hard that they asked him to do. I think he's a lot more polished. And I do think that there's actually a world where he can come in and maybe be even a bridge quarterback, make it so you don't have to spend a bunch of money extending Kirk to bridge yourself to a more serious rookie, interesting developmental guy. Same category, Dorian Thompson-Robinson out of UCLA. I've been pounding the table for him for a long time. Big fan of him. Quarterback is really where my mind has gone here. I like Rajon Wright, another corner, if you want to go for another corner out of Oregon State. Clark Phillips still on the board. Keely Ringo still on the board. Who knows if those guys maybe fall to 119. So there's still a lot of interesting corners out there if you want to double up, and I kind of think they have to.
Yeah, Sam, I want a few names from you as well, but also help me rank the biggest remaining needs for you for the Vikings now, just top to bottom moving forward. They got their receiver. They got at least one cornerback now. What's the top 2 or 3, biggest positions of need, just based off the lack of depth, I guess, on the current roster?
I've been pounding the table for defensive line. I think you got to get more players in this pipeline. You got to be grooming someone at edge to hopefully step in next year. You got to have interior help. I've been intrigued by a couple small school guys, Andre Carter from Army, Carl Brooks from Bowling Green. More fond of Brooks than Carter. Carter's probably a little more athletic. Brooks has a little better production the last 2 years. Both really just interesting smaller school guys. And worth noting too, Rick always liked his day 3 small school guys. Kwesi, I don't believe he's taken one yet in a draft and a half. He's been very like blue blood schools. Might just be a coincidence. Obviously, a couple of USC guys this year so far. So those are the 2 edges that I'm looking at. But double dip at corner is super likely. As I mentioned, 13 corners above Blackman on the consensus board, and Blackman was the last pick of the 3rd round. So all those guys are still sitting there, including Jalen Jones, Terrell Smith from Minnesota, and plenty more guys. A couple of those undersized nickels too, Travius Hodges-Tomlinson, Clark Phillips, if you're interested in that, kind of a smaller, feistier type. But I think if you're ranking priorities, defensive line, corner remains a priority, linebacker, Owen Papo still on the board, I believe. Luke, that's your guy. Yeah,
Bruce Feldman, freak list, stand up. Let's go.
Let's get Spinman's favorite on the board.
GG by G, baby. Sam, I think most would agree with you. Always start in the trenches, work your way out if you can. But I don't know. Not that these guys I'm about to name should really sway your decisions in the draft, but just given the free agent signings up front, Marcus Davenport, guys like Dean Laurie, etc. I just look at that cornerback depth chart, and I got a hard time thinking that's who they feel confident trotting out there come week one. Like, love Byron Murphy to death. Hope Andrew Booth and Evans pan out. You just can't have enough of these guys, though. And taking advantage, right? It's all about value of the stacked cornerback class was always a priority. And these are the rounds you find the value in, right? And I think they just need to stick to the plan now and come away with one more for Flores to be able to run this defense the way he wants with those exotic, aggressive blitzes and just having the talent at corner to hold up for an entire 17-game season really is what I'm worried about at the end of the day. And there's still so many names out there, too, I look at and think, this guy could be a legitimate contributor, too. You guys already ripped off a lot of them. Darius Rush, though, super high on him from South Carolina. Clark Phillips, Jacorian Bennett. Luke, I think you mentioned him yesterday from Maryland. Combine freak. Terrell Smith, the local kid from Minnesota. And Tre'Davious Tomlinson, same. I think you just mentioned him. Huge outlier. I get it. Dude's like 5'8" on a good day. The dude won the Jim Thorpe Award for a reason, though. And I just think Vikes just need some guys who know how to cover, know how to tackle, and just know how to play some good football. All right, guys, last one before we get out of here, 60 seconds each. Best and worst drafts from what you've seen thus far. Sam, top of your head, biggest winner and biggest loser thus far.
So it's very hard to say Detroit is a loser because they've got 5 players that might contribute. Right? They got 5 players, period, at the end of day 2. It's a good draft. I don't know about the value they received. But again, we can't overlook the fact that they have added some high-end talent, regardless of draft spot, and that might really bolster that roster. Seattle had a strange day 2. And they took another running back. And I'm blanking. Who was the guy they took in round 2 who was super overvalued? Seattle kind of regressed in day 2, I thought. That was a little weird.
Derek Hall?
Say again?
Auburn,
Derek
the
Hall,
edge rusher you talk about? Derek Hall?
Yeah. Charbonnet's the running back.
Yeah, Seattle did a couple weird things. Braun, what do you think? Losers on day 2?
I'm not going to hesitate. I'll call the Lions a loser. They turned TJ Hawkinson into a quarterback that will never play serious football for them and a tight end that they reached on. Get out of here. And then they took they were going to take Jahmyr Gibbs, a running back at 6 overall, and ended up trading back to 12 and still getting him because of course, Jack Campbell. I actually don't hate that pick. I like the Brian Branch pick for them. I get taking 5 players is okay, but when you have 5 draft picks, you're also expected to get, I think, a lot more than they got. I was going to say Seattle, but I'll give you a different for a winner. I mean, they just crushed this, but how about Indy? Getting Anthony Richardson, Julius Brents, Josh Downs.
That was
a bunch of athletes.
Just
a whole bunch of jocks. Absolutely love what they're putting together.
Yeah, you're right. They just built a basketball team over there. Already got Jonathan Taylor, Quentin Nelson, the Bullies with the ground and pound. But Anthony Richardson's your quarterback. You got Michael Pittman Jr., Julius Brents. Did somebody take Darnell Washington yet? Because I just imagine him with that combo. Steelers, where did he end up going? Steelers. Of course he went to the Steelers. Yeah, you're right. Indy, man. I was so high on Julius Brents. To see Julius Brents.
Steelers had a build.
I forgot the Lions took one of the worst athletes in the draft, too, in that Broderick Martin from Western Kentucky, the defensive tackle.
Yeah, they were
they traded up a lot for him, too.
Yeah, that was goofy.
It felt like this is the moment the Lions could spin this into a much more serious attempt at really contending for a title, and it feels like they're spinning their wheels. Get rid of Hawkinson, get another Iowa tight end. What did you do with the value you got from that? I don't know.
Yeah, Lions, they got 3 5th-round picks. Correct me if I'm wrong. The last time I checked, Brad Holmes has done so much wheeling and dealing.
Yeah, they traded a bunch.
But I think they got 3 5ths tomorrow, too. I'm with you guys. Rich get richer. The additions, the Eagles and the Seahawks, not to be a broken record, just solidifying that they'll not only be good next year again. They're set up now for the long haul, especially if Geno Smith can continue to be the guy he was last season. Tariq Woolen and now Witherspoon, that combo is just absolutely ridiculous. You got Kobe Bryant from Cincinnati, the day 3 pick from last year as well, inside. Whoo, that's dirty, man. Biggest loser? How about Houston? Why not? What in the heck makes you think you got the roster to start trading away future first-round picks? Will Anderson, He better be a Pro Bowler by year 2.
Sure.
Otherwise, that move is just, it's going to be highly criticized, as it should be. And as far as getting their quarterback of the future, did you even like CJ Stroud? Like, hey, just between you and me, man, did you like CJ Stroud? Because it definitely didn't seem like they were in love with him throughout the process leading up those last 2-3 weeks. And it just, honestly, it almost just felt like a pick just to make a pick. Like we talked about, Vikings got to love a guy at quarterback. Don't just pick a guy just to pick a guy. It's kind of what it felt like. And CJ Stroud, I mean, nobody's going to argue. He could be really good, but it was just a goofy draft. I like Tank Dell in the 3rd round, but you got a 2nd rounder. You use it on what, a lot of people's 4th or 5th ranked center from Penn State. So I just don't see the vision long-term. I thought the value was really lacking when you give away that much future ammo, which, by the way, that future pick could easily end up being a top 5 pick next year. You just gave up, which is wild to think about. Arizona might be sitting there with the number 1 or number 2 picks or something like that in 2024. Who knows? But I digress. All right. Quick last recap. Vikes move back in round 3. They're now set with 5 more picks tomorrow on day 3. Huge night coming up tomorrow, guys. Again, this is where you find the glue in between the cracks of every roster. Vikings currently own a 4th, 2 5ths, a 6th, and a 7th after Kwesi finally gets his first trade in the books of the 2023 draft. Rest assured, we'll be covering all the action and rest of the Vikings draft tomorrow. Make sure you check out Luke Braun on Locked On Vikings for all the latest. He's on Twitter at Luke Braun NFL. You get Sam and I once day 3 concludes tomorrow night up on Locked On Sports Minnesota Network. Follow Sam on Twitter at Sam Ekstrom and check out his draft breakdown on Monday morning as well on the Ron Johnson Show. Until tomorrow night, though, guys, I'm Luke Inman on Twitter at Luke_Spinman. Signing out.